Hello everyone, I'm Joey Alonso. So welcome to part 2 of my accounting tutorial series. So on this part, I want to discuss the basic terminologies in accounting. So in part 1, I was able to discuss the meaning of accounting. So if you don't have any idea about accounting, please go back to that video so you can have some idea what is accounting, because in here I will discuss what are the basic terminologies in accounting. Okay, so why do you need to know accounting terminologies? Why do you need to know those things? Of course, the number one reason why you need to know those terminologies is to know the right way to do accounting entries. So meaning you will be able to determine what account to debit and what account to credit. Because if you don't understand, excuse me, what's an asset or what is a liability, so how can you know what to debit and what to credit, right? So you must understand these terminologies in order for you to do the proper accounting entry. Okay. So first terminology that I want to discuss is about asset. Okay, so what's an asset? So asset in its basic definition is it is a resource owned by the company used in its business operation. So take note of the keywords. It is owned by the company and it is being used in its business operation. So therefore an item should be owned by the company and you should be using it in business operation. So if you are not using it in business operation, although you own it, it cannot be considered as an asset. Or if you are using it in your operation and you don't own it, it is also not considered an asset. So these things should be satisfied, or this condition should be satisfied in order for an item or a resource can be considered an asset. Okay, so one example is oven. So how do I say that an oven is an asset? So let's say you are a bake shop company. Okay, so you use oven in order to bake the breads or the cakes or the pastries that you are selling to your customers, right? So in this case, you are using oven on your operation and you own it. Okay, so you are using it in order to make your sales, to make your product, so to operate your business. So therefore, in this case, oven is qualified as an asset. Okay, another major asset that you need to know is cash. One of the major example. First, you need cash in order to pay your bills. Okay, to pay your electricity bills, your water bills or utilities, to pay for your machineries in producing your goods. So without cash, and you cannot pay those things that you need in your operation, so therefore you cannot operate, right? So if you cannot pay your electricity, and of course the electricity company will cut off your electricity, therefore in this case you cannot operate, right? So therefore you need cash in order to operate your business. So therefore cash is also an asset. Now there's a caveat, no, when it comes to asset. Like for instance a car, for example. Okay, so a car can be considered an asset if you use it in your operation. For example, you use it to deliver goods to your customer. So you use it, for example, if you are an ERP company, you use it as a service, as a utility vehicle of your employees to send them to the clients in order to do the demos. Okay, so in that case, a car is considered as an asset. But for example, a car is being used personally by the owner. For example, he is just using it in order to fetch his kids from school, or maybe to fetch his wife. So in that case, it is not considered as an asset because although the owner owns that car, it is not being used in the operation of the business in order to generate income. Everything is just for personal leisure of the owner or personal expense. Okay, so in that case, car is not considered an asset. Okay. Okay, so the next terminology that I want to discuss is about liability. Okay, so liability is something owed by the company to another entity or individual used in business operation. Okay, so the key word here is you owe. It's something owed. Okay, so when something is owed, that means you take possession of something and you didn't pay for it at that time, right? But of course, you promise to pay it in future. So normally you promise to pay it in future, maybe after a year, after 30 days, 60 days. The thing is, you promise to pay it. Okay, that's something you take possession in order to use it in your business operation. So in that case, that is actually a liability. Okay, so one example of a liability is accounts payable. In fact, this is the most popular among the examples of liability. Okay, so for instance, you buy machineries to produce your goods, and then you didn't pay, but you promised to pay after a year. So in that case, you owe the supplier of those machineries to operate your factory. You promise to pay in future. That's what you call an accounts payable, and it's a liability on your part. Okay, so another thing is if you did not yet pay your salaries, the salary of your employees, in that case, that will be called salaries payable, for example. So it's a payable, and you use your employees to operate your business, because without employees, how can you operate? Unless you are a very small company, maybe just a consultancy, or maybe you're just a freelance and you're just programming software. So in that case, you don't need employees. So in that case, you don't need to pay salaries. But if you are a big companies and of course you utilize the services of your employees, then you need to pay their salaries, right? So if you didn't pay them on time, you delay the salaries. So that's what you call a payable or salaries payable. Okay, so the key word is you owe something from individual or entity in your business operation. Okay, and promise to pay it in the future. Okay, so that's actually a liability. Okay, another terminology that I want to discuss is expense. Okay, so expense is the cost incurred, or the amount of money that you incurred in order to generate income. Okay, so anything that you pay for in order to generate your income or revenue, that is actually an expense. So one very good example is, let's say, utilities expense or electricity expense. So you pay for it, you incur an amount of money, or what you call a cost, in order to generate income, because without electricity, how can you, for example, how can you turn on your machineries? How can you operate your machineries? If you don't operate your machineries, you cannot produce goods, and therefore you don't have sales. You cannot sell to your customer, and if you cannot sell to your customer, in that case, you cannot generate revenue. Okay, so in that case, electricity expense is considered an expense. Okay, or what you call utilities expense. And there are many examples, no? So the thing here is that you are spending money in order to generate income. So that's actually an expense. Okay, the last terminology that I want to discuss is about revenue. So revenue is anything that, or any amount that you receive in selling your goods and services. Okay, for example, you're a bake shop, so you bake your bread and cakes, and then you sell it to your customer, give it to your customer, and the customer eat it, and then customer in return will pay you money for that. So the money that you receive from the customer in exchange for the bread or cake that you gave them, that's actually the revenue. So another thing, maybe it's not physical goods, but rather services. Let's say you are an ERP company, so you go to the client and get their needs, and then you implement the software on them in order to get their information on time, or get the information that they want. Okay, so in that case, after that, the customer will pay you in return for those services. So the amount of money that the customer paid you in return for your services, that's also a revenue. Okay, so another thing is, for example, if you are a wellness company or a facial company, so you make your clients beautiful, handsome, and so on. So by making them beautiful, they will pay you for that. Okay, so in that case, the amount of money that they pay you is also called revenue. Okay, so that's all for now about the accounting terminology. So I hope you learned something from this video. So if you like it, please click thumbs up, and as I always say, please subscribe to my channel, and I promise you'll never regret it. Okay, so bye for now.